Welcome back, welcome back. There are less than 2 weeks to go now before that US election day, and Barack Obama seems to be surging ahead in the polls. One recent survey gave him a 10 percentage point lead. Could the first-term Democratic senator really win a thumping victory? And what would that mean for America? To find out, I'm joined now by Mary Jordan, Pulitzer Prize-winning London bureau chief for the Washington Post. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
Mary. Are you expecting, I was going to say, are you expecting an October surprise? But I suppose it wouldn't be a surprise if you were expecting it.
I think it's not over until it's over.
Right.
And even though there's been a sudden pull away by Obama, this race has been so close for so long, it's almost hard to believe that it's over, though some people are acting like that. But it's not. Until November 4th, we're not really going to know what the turnout is going to be. And I suppose something still could happen in the next few days.
Yes, something could happen. At the moment, if you were drawing up credits and debits on whether Sarah Palin has been a plus or a minus for John McCain, what would the final verdict be?
A huge minus. In the euphoria in the beginning about this exciting, energetic woman, and she was, the face of youth, which McCain needed, it just dissipated pretty quickly. Even Republicans now openly are saying this is where his downfall was.
Really, that's fascinating, yes, because, in fact, there were people who were saying a few weeks ago that if McCain loses, then the party will build its future on Sarah Palin, but that's not going to happen.
I don't think so. I think, now you're seeing people, former speechwriters in Republican White Houses, openly saying this was a disaster for McCain and a mistake. People just didn't feel comfortable thinking that McCain is old. He has had bouts of cancer. Could she be president? I think all these comedy sketches on late night TV really did a toll on her. People just thought she's cute, she's got nice legs, but maybe she's not ready for primetime presidency.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely, that's right. And that was the most crucial thing, because in terms of a heartbeat away, that was more important to get that right for John McCain than for anyone else, because of his age and everything he's conquered in his life, really, which could have taken a toll. Apart from the Palin thing, is there anything else, not doing that, but was there anything else that McCain's campaign should have done or could still do?
Well, first of all, if this economic crisis hadn't hit when it did, I think even more important probably than Palin was the economic crisis. People really are worried in the States. People are losing their jobs at a rapid rate, and they're scared. And it was pretty bad for McCain when he said only about 5 weeks ago that he thought the fundamentals of the American economy were strong. It's just hard to erase that soundbite. There was this feeling that in a crisis, and we have one now, financial one, that Obama was stronger. And I think that's where you really saw the pull away in the polls. And
in fact, did we see the real John McCain, or did we see a shadow of his former self, as it were?
He did seem to fold and lose a bit of confidence, especially in that last debate. He was awkward. He's a funny man, and a lot of people like him. But it almost felt like the intensity of this long race really caught up with him. And by contrast, Obama was seen as unflappable. It looked like you could throw a grenade in the room and Obama would have just sat there and said, well, we're going to deal with that. And at the same time, McCain didn't seem at ease with himself. Yeah.
And Obama, as you say, he looked as though he couldn't be shaken by anything, didn't he, really? Right. And his campaign has been, the stuff of what textbooks are made, I suppose, aren't they?
He got the breaks as well.
Yes.
He had a good campaign, but things continually broke his way, like this crisis, which actually has been very good for him.
Yeah, and in fact, that's the interesting difference between the two countries, because that economic crisis here was good for the governing party,
right,
whereas in America it was bad for the governing party.
Right.
Completely different, yes. So are you going to stay up? Well, you won't have to stay. Well, here you'd have to stay up.
Around the clock. Are you kidding? This
yeah.
is the most exciting race since the 60s, probably since Kennedy-Nixon. Everyone's going to stay up. I'm certainly going to stay up. You're going to watch state by state. I'm from Ohio, which is this important swing state in the Midwest, and everybody says wherever Ohio goes, that's who wins. So, of course, I'm going to be watching state by state.
Fantastic. Well, and at home there, we hope you'll be watching it also, of course, on Al Jazeera English. Thank you very much indeed, Mary. That was great. While most attention is focused on the elections in America this week, there are other moves in the nation's foreign policy. The US government this month launched a new military command focused solely on Africa. The US Africa Command, AFRICOM, will coordinate all US military operations in the continent. But the launch of AFRICOM has not been without controversy. Only Liberia has publicly supported the programme, with Nigeria and South Africa among those voicing opposition. So does this mark a new US commitment to Africa? And if so, how controversial is it? Joining us from Washington is the head of the US Africa Command, General Kip Ward. General, welcome. It's good to have you with us. Let me start by asking, what to you were the main reasons why Nigeria and South Africa, for example, were dubious about this new development of AFRICOM?
I think last year, when the command was first announced, there was a misconception with respect to the purpose of the command and the misunderstanding of what its intended activities would be. First and foremost among that was the notion that the command signaled an increase in U.S. military presence on the continent, and namely in the form of large garrisons of troops in Army bases, air bases, naval bases, and that is absolutely not the case. And as that has been explained around the continent and elsewhere, that initial reluctance has begun to wane, and we now are being seen as a command that will carry out those traditional military activities that we have been doing, but heretofore by three separate commands, now under a single command focused on the continent of Africa.
And in fact, the reason for moving the base or the center of this Operation AFRICOM from somewhere in Africa to Stuttgart was the doubts of these countries we mentioned, was it? Is that why you moved it to Stuttgart?
Well, quite candidly, it was never the intent to have the entire headquarters on the continent of Africa, but that was the perception. And as we've worked to clarify that, that has served to clear up that misperception and bring those who did not quite understand a greater understanding of the reality. Being in Stuttgart has always been, at least for the time being, as it will be for the foreseeable future, the location for the headquarters.
And General, the main concerns, the AFRICOM's main concerns are presumably, in terms of the continent of Africa, terrorism and oil, because America expects 25% of its oil from Africa by 2015. Those are the two main concerns? Your two main concerns yourself?
No, those aren't main concerns. Our main concern is to do the best that we can as African nations, as well as their organizations, seek to increase their ability to provide security and participate in peacekeeping operations to be more capable of doing that. It includes the work that we have been doing and that we will look to continue to do as African nations prepare their forces in training, the deployment. As an example, when they are moving from one part of the continent to another and getting there aboard aircraft or trains, how to properly load equipment, keeping the various categories of supplies in safe configurations, professionalization of their militaries from the non-commissioned officers to the officers. It's those sorts of activities that we have been engaged in at the request of our African partners and friends, and that we will continue to do, again, as they work to be better prepared and better able to provide for their own security.
If you're moving in, Kip, if you're moving into a country to help or whatever, will the country have a veto on whether you can come in or not?
Absolutely. Again, we go nowhere we're not invited.
Right.
So these activities are done first because the African nations requested. An example are recent activities associated with the Africa Partnership Station, where the nations in the Gulf of Guinea came together seeking to do things to improve their own ability to have better control over their maritime territorial waters, illegal fishing, robbing the nations of their treasures. So as they sought to become better able to take care of their own territorial waters, they asked for assistance in the form of maintenance of their naval vessels, training, professionalization, and we do that, again, at their request during the time frames that they would ask us, and also with the support and concurrence of our chiefs of missions, our ambassadors there in those nations. So all of these actions and activities are approved, coordinated well in advance, and are conducted at the request of our African partners at the national level and also their regional organizations.
In a number of the pieces I've read, people have talked about the fact that one of your purposes is to, quote, counter the Al-Qaeda squirt tendency. What does that mean you have to do?
Well, I'm not quite sure I understand that particular characterization. The nations of Africa have indicated that they seek to be able to have a better ability to provide for their own security. The terrorist threat, Al-Qaeda has said that they look to do things that are in contravention to those good order and law circumstances. They have said that, and where the nations of Africa have come to us seeking ways to help improve their capacities to deal with threats of terror, threats of trafficking of humans, drugs, weapons, illegal fishing, other activities that threaten their sovereignty, that threaten to rob them of their treasures so that they can provide for their own people. We provided the assistance where, again, our foreign policy supports such military-to-military activities.
General Kipp, thank you very much for being with us and for taking us on a conducted tour for your plans for AFRICOM. We really appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much indeed.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, and we look forward to doing our part as we continue to work together to bring additional stability to the continent of Africa and its island nations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. General Ward there. Now, the world's most celebrated photographer, probably, Annie Leibovitz. She's with us in a unique visit to her exhibition after the news headlines.